Good morning, everyone. We welcome you to our second of 4 unit record report presentations. My name is Ann Boyle, and joining me this morning is Carla Idle-Corwin, our Associate Director. Before we get started, I'd like to just go through a brief housekeeping with you. You should have on your screen a pop-up. We have everyone currently on mute. We will be recording this session and posting it on our website for your review at a later time. In the meantime, there is a chat box on your pop-up window. We encourage you to use that to provide us with questions as we go through the presentation. We will be monitoring that and occasionally turning the mute off so that we may take questions or respond to any chat log questions that we receive. With that, I'd like to go ahead and turn the meeting over to Carla, and she will cover the majority of this presentation.
Good morning, everybody. I just want to make sure that people can hear. If somebody could put in the chat box if they can, in fact, or can hear this presentation. Thank you. So good morning and welcome, everyone. As Ann indicated, this is our second unit record report. Some of you may wonder where I came from or who I am. And so I just wanted to give you a quick self-intro. I spent almost 27 years on a community college campus, completing the unit record as a user from the higher ed side, and now I'm working at WSAC. I've been here just over 2 years, but in a different role, and I'm transitioning to the need-based side of the house. So I get to see it from the other side of the fence this time, and I'm here to help guide and support all of you. As you know, this is the 48th year of the unit record, which coincides with the creation of the state need grant program. The unit record provides a lot of great information that we need for not only doing comparisons between institutions across the state, but it also measures the need of students and the unmet need. And so we look at all of this data to help inform legislators and policy decisions that impact the various state aid programs. Becky Thompson, our Director of Financial Aid and our Student Financial Assistance, and Rochelle Sharp, our Deputy Executive Director, is they're very attuned to the data that comes out of these reports, and that is how the tools that they use to advocate for students in the legislative session and throughout the year. We also use the data in modeling when we are looking at proposed changes or get legislative requests for proposed changes to the program. We have tools that we can then use to make informed decisions and recommendations. It also provides a centralized data repository. So some of you may have requests from your institutions to see how you compare to other institutions in your sector. And we use all of the information to create those reports, and we'll cover those a little bit later so that we can make sure you know what tools you have at your fingertips. The unit record manual, as you know, was posted, I believe, a week ago Friday, I think was the date, something like that. And the unit record report application will open on August 14th. We are pleading with you to complete the application or complete the unit record early, if at all possible. It does not close until October 20th. We do recognize WAFA is October 11th through the 13th, and so we wanted to make sure there was not a conflict with the schedules this year. Once we actually receive everyone's reports, we begin the analysis here in-house, looking at the data institution by institution, as well as looking at sector reports, and begin to develop all of the materials used for reporting back to policymakers, and then we establish the institutional profile reports that are made available to you through the portal. You'll be able to access your reports via the portal unit record section, and then you can do the comparisons to for your institution to your sector. The manuals are online and available to you. Lots of great information in there. Pretty straightforward introduction. We do ask that you pay close attention to the changes page that is included in the introduction section. It gives you highlights of what's new and different. Chapter 1 is just your basic instructions. 2 is your data definitions, and that helps you figure out where your various programs go. Your application user guide, which is using the actual portal, and then the appendices. The appendices are really useful tools in helping you figure out who do I report, what do I report, where do I report, and what is the record layout. Appendices D and E are really where you can build your template for where to put what award codes based on the program type and if they're need-based or non-need-based, and the funding source. You will be submitting your unit record data by CSV file, and you will, for this year, be reporting only students who received financial aid based on the 2016-17 FAFSA or the WSAC. And you do have to make sure that you have a header row provided in your CSV file. We know that many of you have done these time and again, but we do have some new folks on board. And we do have a sample CSV file on our website, so the layout has not changed from last year to this year, but we would encourage everyone to take a look at that. In determining who to report, you know, we're trying to get all of the right students into the unit record report. And there's essentially 3 categories of students: those who receive need-based aid, whether based on a FAFSA or a WSAC for 2016-17, need-based aid recipients where there are other programs that a FAFSA may or may not be required, such as the Opportunity Scholarship, Get Ready for Math and Science, or the State Board Opportunity Grant. And the last category is our non-need-based federal loan recipients. The intent of the program really is to capture all the recipients' data term by term. And so it's really important that you keep track that we really want data just related to the 2016-17 FAFSA or WSAC. As we're well aware, you're busy with 17-18 at the same time, and so we're not looking for that data. We just want your 16-17. And the types of programs that you'll be reporting on, I'm not going to read all of the list to you, but it's important to note we do have a new program this year at the state level. The Student Teaching Grant is also known as the Student Teacher Residency Grant, and that program will be reported under your other state-funded gift assistance. And unlike the other programs reported in that particular category, the Student Teaching Grant is a need-based program, and FAFSA information is required for it. However, we don't want you to be confused because effective 17-18, there is a teacher shortage conditional grant, and that one next year will be reported as a conditional loan. All the programs that we're asking you to report, we have listed up above as well that are other need-based recipient programs. Some are federal, some are state. We're trying to get a complete picture of the type of assistance our students are receiving. We're asking you to report if you are tracking or if your students' need-based recipients are receiving VFAP funds. Those are reported as worker retraining funds, and if you receive them, please report them in that category if at all possible. We're trying to capture all federal loan assistance whenever reportable, and so those ones are pretty straightforward. One of the big changes for the 2016-17, next one, unit record report. Again, I talked about in the introduction to the unit record manual, there is the highlights and changes. Probably the most significant relates to cost of attendance and tuition waivers. We're asking for your assistance this year to report the full assessed tuition amounts and cost of attendance before the application of tuition waivers. And then also you'll be reporting the tuition waiver. We're asking for that for 16-17. It will be required for 2017-18. In terms of reporting and checks and balances related to interim reports, we will be comparing unserved, and Anne will cover in detail how you will be submitting your unmatched unserved list. The family size, number in college, and family income are overrideable edits if it does not match CSOB, but will have to be addressed. And we are asking that colleges please rely on their federal methodology reporting, not institutional methodology. Our goal, of course, is cleaner data. Other changes are the student teaching grants that I mentioned earlier, which is tied to the FAFSA and is need-based for 16-17, and then the new grants that will begin in 17-18. And that one's a conditional, considered conditional. Just to highlight the changes that were made in terms of valid input ranges because of changes in maximum awards. Highlighted some of those in case it helps you remember to perhaps update your own tables. What we're asking you to report is listed here. Not going to read all that to you, but at a minimum, we are capturing all of the data and trying to show what resources our students have and their unmet needs. Another issue that has come up has to do with students who receive assistance in Summer 1 and Summer 2, but all tied to the same academic year. So for example, your 2016-17 student, you could potentially have someone with entries in all 5 terms. Please do make sure you report that. Primarily what we see has to do with students who are receiving either institutional funds or worker retraining funds, where they may have an entry in Summer 1 and then also have an entry in Summer 2. And if you have summer sessions that have many sessions within them, you need to add those together and report it within just that one term. In terms of the FAFSA and WSAC related fields, there's a listing there that we're asking for, and that what we're doing is capturing the entire picture so that we can show the complete picture of a student situation. A few special notes about certain selected fields that we have encountered issues with relate to duplicate Social Security numbers, and just so you know, that will stop you from being able to upload and submit. And so you will need to reach out to us if you see any duplicate Social Security numbers so that we can actually make sure that the student data and history is corrected on our end as well, and will be your technical assistance person to get those resolved. We will also be comparing Social Security numbers and for college-bound state need grant, and looking at the final interim reports from July. And then we'll also be comparing the passport to college for our portal records. And so you will get an edit report that Anne will cover in detail to help you work through any of those issues. In terms of your academic year in school definitions, we have a listing here for you. The key is to make sure that although you have 8 options, that you're listing the status the student was at as of the beginning of their last term that they received money. So if you have a student who began fall quarter, for example, as a sophomore, but they completed credits and progressed to junior level status, turned around and received money winter, they would then be reported as a junior level. We ask that you please not rely on the automatic year in school reported on the FAFSA or WSAC. We ask that you, again, report the highest year in school, link it to the last term that they received money, and many of you will probably not use Code 8 or other, but it is an option in the event it's needed. For your family information, relies primarily on your WSAC or FAFSA data. If you have a dependent student, we know it has to be 2 or higher. If you have an independent student, we know it has to be 1 or higher. Please note that parents' enrollment in college should not be included unless you did professional judgment, in which case it would be reflected obviously on the FAFSA data or the WSAC data. When you're reporting family income, this is the only location that you can actually report a negative number. This does rely on your 2015 income unless you had made a professional judgment on that student's record. We ask that you report whole integers, no dollars, no cents, no dollar signs or cents, I should say. For your expected family contribution, we are asking that you use the federal methodology if they have filed the FAFSA, or the calculation as provided by the WSAC. If you've made adjustments based on professional judgment decisions, that should be what was reported. And one of the key elements that is very critical is that when you're reporting your expected family contribution, you also are conscious of the duration based on how you're reporting your cost of attendance and awards. For example, if you have a student with a 9-month cost of attendance, we would want the 9-month expected family contribution and the 9-month need. If you adjust for some reason to a 3-month period, we would ask that those 3 elements also reflect 3 months. In this instance, you would not be reporting negative values. You would report them as 0. So this field does not permit a negative amount. And in terms of reporting the need, if you set your students up at 9 months and you do not have a policy of recalculating if a student fails to attend the subsequent quarters after their initial enrollment, you are not required to go back and adjust everything to a 3-month period. But if you do, that's fine as well. Just make sure that all 3 elements are consistent. We've provided a chart for the various definitions, I'm sure very familiar to many of you, related to enrollment levels and the codes as they compute into the unit record system. For clock hour schools, we've provided an approximate term chart because you typically don't have set begin and end dates, and so we've provided that chart for you. And for state need grants, college bound, and passport to college, please make sure you're reporting the final awards received by the student, and recognize that we will be checking against the final interim. And so Anne will cover the report that will be coming up in her section on how to respond to edits when these two, when this check and balance is not balanced. This again is to highlight the requirement for the reporting of tuition waivers for the request to report 16-17, but required for 17-18, where you're reporting the student's full assessed cost of attendance, and then also reporting the value of the tuition waivers that they receive. And there's 2 different locations those can be reported: under need-based if it's a need-based waiver, or under non-need-based if it's a non-need-based waiver. And again, those are requested for 16-17, but required for 17-18. For your state work-study students, you can report quarterly, or if you have different cutoff dates that don't coincide, you do have the option of averaging gross term earnings over the academic year for all terms that the student was enrolled at least half time. You do want to include your summer employment as well. For your institutional gift aid, it's either going to be need-based or non-need-based. Really the distinction being that need-based ties to your FAFSA or WSAC, non-need does not. Other state-funded gift assistance, some of you may wonder what we're referring to, and so these are just some examples: the American Indian Endowed, Washington Scholars, and the new Student Teaching Residency Grant. So that gives you some ideas of what may go in that field on your tables. In terms of edits, you may have edits where they're softer that you can override, and then there are any of them that are FAFSA related. If they're not receiving FAFSA or WSAC-based aid, they're a softer edit versus one that is a need-based where it's going to be a harder edit. And if you have students with only non-need-based federal loans. Edits that prevent your file upload tend to get the most attention. And there's a list of 12 items in the manual that is referred to on page 44. And probably the most common are, you know, header row missing or invalid, and duplicate social numbers. Those ones are very critical. But there's a complete list in the unit record manual for all of you to take a look at if you're encountering issues. Some examples of non-overrideable edits. If you do your file upload and that works, but then you start doing secondary edits, these are the types of edits that will require you to correct them before you can actually submit. So if you reported 0 aid, that's going to be an edit because we're not looking for students who received no aid. If there's an edit check against residency and the student got state aid or state need grant, that's going to require you to correct it. Overrideable edit examples include cost of attendance minus EFC doesn't equal need amount. There can be explanations for that. The date of birth outliers where you either have an exceptionally young or an exceptionally elderly student.
A quick question.
We have a quick question.
Is there somewhere I can print off the presentation? We will be making the PowerPoint and the recorded video available on our website, and that will be sent to you by email sometime after this presentation. It may take several days, but we will have something on the website for you to review and also to print.
And so concluding my section of the presentation, Anne just talked about the fact that this session will be posted when it's, and you'll be emailed as soon as it's available for you so that you can share it with other members of your staff who may not have been able to attend the sessions. We do have 2 more sessions at the end of the month as well. Please make sure that you use the portal training tool that we have available. It's a great way to see if your file upload is compatible and let you start working on some of the edits that you may be able to address before you do the actual upload. And then, let's see, I think that's it for me. If you have questions, please call or email Anne or I, and our contact information will be provided to you at the end of this session. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anne.
All right, thank you, Carla. I think most of you have already been to our portal, but here on the screen is our direct address to that site. The alternate way to get there is to go to our main WSAC website at www.wasac.wa.gov. Click on the Administrator tab, and you'll find a link to the portal just below that. Once you get to this landing site, there are 2 places you can go. If you want to do other applications besides the unit record or have other things that you'll be doing there, you can log in here at the top, and that will just take you to the general menu. If you want to directly log into the unit record, there is a link down here under the Financial Aid Administrators category that will take you directly to the portal for the unit record itself. Once you're in the portal, you click on the Programs menu and locate the unit record as your option and click on that. It will take you, the first time you log into the unit record report, to this landing page. Once you have uploaded a file and perhaps work in that, if you leave that site and then come back into the unit record at a later point, you bypass this welcome screen and you go directly to whatever point you left off, whether it's ready to begin, in progress, or submitted. At this welcome screen, you would just click Next to Proceed, which takes you to the screen where you upload your CSV file. It does need to be a CSV file. Just locate that on your PC using this Browse button shown as arrow number 1, and then click the Upload. Or if you prefer, you can add students manually, one by one. We don't recommend that if you have a large file because it does take a long time. Once you have started your upload, you will see a processing bar. It goes fairly quickly, but for those schools that have large files, it will show you just exactly where you are in that processing. If you have a file that has major errors that keep the file from processing, you will receive a list of those errors. It will show you which row to find the error, what the problem is, what field that problem is in, and then ultimately you must discard that file, address those errors, and then re-upload a new file. This year, for the first time, for those institutions who have very large files, we do have a discard upload button that you can use during that initial upload. If you realize that you have the wrong file or there's a problem with that file, you can click this discard upload and it will automatically shut that down so that you can locate another file to upload. Once the upload is complete, you will have a brief chart that just summarizes your data in terms of the enrollment status of your student population. We ask that you just take a quick peek at that to see whether or not that looks reasonable, and if it does, then go ahead and click the Proceed to Edits button. What happens here is then the file is processed for those edits that may be addressed. If you have a large file, you will want to press this refresh key periodically. It will start loading edits right away, and you can start addressing those as they come in. But at the very end, if you still see a refresh button, that means that that file is still in process, and we suggest that you click that refresh button periodically. You can sort your edits and address them in several different ways. The top row has the categories by which you can sort your file, and then select that sort here in this drop-down box. What it will do is reorder your edits so that you can address them, whether it's by type of edit or by name. Ultimately, your file can't be submitted until all the non-overrideable edits have been corrected and all of the overrideable edits are fixed or overridden with a reason. In order to address the record, you would go to the Social Security number and click on that number, which will then open up the student record. All of the errors for that student will be listed up in this upper left-hand corner. On the record itself, there are two tabs. The first page has the student demographics, and the second tab has the student aid. In order to fix that record, you can either, if you believe that this edit has a valid reason, you can click the override and tell us why that should not be changed. If it is something that can be corrected, you can click directly into whatever field needs to be corrected, whether it's in the Student Aid tab or in the Demographics and Need tab. Make those changes and be sure that you click the Save button down at the bottom. If you're overriding, when you click that override button, it will bring up a pop-up box. You state your reason in the comments and click Save. Once you have done that, you can double check your work by hovering your cursor over that little blue eye icon, and it will pop up a little yellow box that will bring back to you the reason that you've entered. After you've addressed all of those edits, you can then go into take a look at the discrepancies that might exist in the State Need Grant, College Bound, and Passport to College programs. Each of these is indicated under a separate tab. And what you will see is if you have already addressed a problem, you will find in this override requested column a Y that indicates you've already made a change to that. If that column is blank, it does mean that you need to enter that student record and make a correction or enter an override reason, which we've addressed in that previous section. If you have several discrepancies, it may be easier to download a CSV first and then review that separate file and go back into the unit record to address whatever missing records might need to be added or to make corrections. If you're adding missing data to an existing record that perhaps doesn't appear on the State Need Grant, College Bound, or Passport discrepancies report, you can go back up to the main menu at the top of your screen and click on that. Find the search button and click on that, which will then open your student record. If you find you need to add a missing record, on that same edit screen in the yellow box, there is an add a new unit record to the report. And once you click that, it will then open up a blank student record with both of the demographics and the student aid tab. You must remember to complete both sections of that record and remember to click Save at the bottom to save your work. Otherwise, when you exit that record, it will lose the information that you've provided. Here is just an example of the different programs that are listed within the Student Aid tab. And I believe, let me see here. Also, there are all 5 of the different terms. We remind you that if you place dollars in one of those terms, that you make sure that you change that from not enrolled to the appropriate enrollment category. Not new this year is the Unserved Students Report. This report provides us with a comparison of your unserved report in Seesaw for whom we do not see a unit record. What has changed this year is the process for reporting back your corrections or your changes to this report. Initially, what I would ask you to do is take a look at all of the names for your list, and if you identify students for whom you have provided some form of need-based aid, we ask that you go back into that initial edit screen and add that student record. Adding that record will remove them from this report. That being the first step, will then winnow down that list so that what you're dealing with is only those students for whom there are differences or that are missing from the unit record, and for whom we still see some type of report from you as enrolled during the year in the Seesaw report. The next step would be to download a list of the list to the CSV. And the top half of this screen shows you the blank report that comes down from that. In each of these red boxes are columns for which you would be either providing us with changed information or comments here on this very end. If you look at a record here and all of the information is correct as reported, the only place you need to make an indication is in this indicate yes if all terms are okay column. Just indicate yes there. If there are changes, then we ask that you place that in the appropriate verify column. Here, this student was originally shown in Seesaw as full-time. At year end, in generating this report, you realized that that person was less than half-time. You would make that note there. Same thing here for winter term. If there's not a difference, then you would leave that area blank. So essentially, this is just a comparison so you can see what we're asking you to do. I believe last year all we asked you to do was to indicate whether it was a yes and then to enter all of those changes in the comment section. This particular report will allow us to see very clearly which term each of those changes is associated with. Ultimately, you would save your report to your PC and then upload that to us. I believe we have a question, so I'm going to take a peek at that. If they received other aid but not state need grant, do we still have to go in and make the adjustment? I thought this was only unserved state need grant students. I believe you're correct. What this is looking at is your Seesaw for the state need grant and college-bound students. So I don't believe this report will address anything other than those that are mismatches or missing from the state need grant portion of the Seesaw. Does that answer your question? Are there any other questions at this point? I'm going to move on then. After you have saved that CSV report to your PC, you would click this send an email button and attach that CSV form to that email and send it to us as a secure email. We ask that you not send it to us direct through you know, the regular email, because it does contain sensitive information. There's social security numbers and whatnot in there. So that is the most secure way that you can send us the information. Finally, if there are any social security number mismatches in any one of these tabs, as Carla mentioned earlier, that is not something that you can correct from your end. You will need to let us know, and then we can contact our IT department to make sure that those records are corrected and that you know, all of the data aligns to that same number. In order to notify us, click on this send an email. It's the same button that you use to send us the missing unserved report. And that will send it to us through the secure portal email, avoiding any public exposure to that information. Once all of these discrepancies have been addressed, you would then either click to continue if you are ready to move forward with submitting your report, or if you realize that there are some additional changes or edits that you need to make, you can return to that edit list and address those there. We're almost at the home stretch here. This is the next to the last step before you submit your report. This is the institutional profile report. There is a comparison with your last 4 years data by program in this. We ask that you take a look at this to see whether there is anything that looks out of line. If you have any questions about the information you see on that report, you can give us a call or shoot us an email, and we'd be happy to address that. One note that I would like to caution you is that before the January profile reports are available, if you have reported to us additional information, non-need-based information for any of your students, some of that information will be in here and may skew the percentage changes or the dollars that you see there. Once all of the unit records have been retained here, we do close the unit record, and at that point, we remove all of the extraneous information. So these reports may appear a little bit different when you access them in January than what you see here at initial submission. If everything looks correct or we've been able to address your questions, click to continue, and that will take you to this page where you would then click Submit Your Unit Record Report. At the point you click this, you will receive a pop-up here, and that reminds you that once you have submitted your unit record report, you are no longer able to go in and make additional edits without contacting one of us in the unit record team. We can reopen your file so that you can make additional edits if you need that to happen, but you aren't able to do that without our assistance. At this point, once you've clicked the Submit button, you will have confirmation both here in the upper corner, which will change from in progress to submitted. You will also see on this left-hand corner the names and the dates where all of those actions have taken place. At that point, you can log out in the upper right-hand corner.
And we're on the home stretch. This is Carla again. And at the very end of your submission, you have access to a variety of tools, some that are immediate and some that are made available in January. Again, please take a look at your data and use the tools that are available. The January 2018 reports will give you the ability to make comparisons across your sectors. And I know that colleges have historically requested this type of information, which we've made available, and it will remain available on your portal. It's just the bottom 4 reports won't be available with the cross-sector comparisons for the current year until January. So your prior year data is all out there, and you're welcome to take a look. And with that, just to point out, we have our unit record manual online, ready and available for you. The report system will be available starting August 14th. And if you have any questions, please email either the unit record inbox, Ann and I both monitor that, or either of us directly, or feel free to pick up the phone and give us a call. Are there any questions remaining for anyone on the line? We'll unmute now. Hearing none, we thank all of you for your participation and great questions. The recording should be available probably next week, and that will include the PowerPoint.
Thank you, everyone. We look forward to working with you this season. Take care.